Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, 7 Emerging Data Center Trends in 2022. So we are about to begin shortly. So if you guys just want to hang out, that'd be great. We do have a few housekeeping items we will go over. So as a reminder, please click the questions button at the bottom of your screen and then type in any questions you have. We'll be taking those at the end of the session. So please do that. We do have attachments for you to download and reports. So there's an attachment tab also at the bottom of your screen. Please take advantage of that. There'll be a copy of this presentation that will be sent to you after the event concludes. So please look for an email from us afterwards. And again, we're very interested in feedback. So at the end, it'll ask you to give us a rating and some feedback. We do read all of that. So please continue to give us feedback for these events so we can continue to improve them. So with that being said, we do have a few speakers here today. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer. I'm with Cloudian. I will be your host. Then we also have Larry Meese. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks, Jen.
Larry is the VP of Product and Solutions at Cloudian. And then we have the lovely Amit Rolani. Welcome, Amit.
Thank you for calling me lovely. And hi, folks. Thanks. Wonderful to be here.
And then Amit's the Director of Alliances at Cloudian. And thank you guys for joining us today. So with all the continued unpredictability of 2021, we are eager to make our 2022 predictions. So we'll go through our top 7 predictions for the new year centered around data storage and security. And we would like to kick that off with number 1. So instead of migrating legacy apps to the cloud, organizations will create cloud-like environments on premise. We'll start with you, Larry. How do you see this playing out in 2022?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. This continues to be a pretty debated topic and a topic of interest. So if you look at data such as healthcare records, financial information, they're really subject to regulatory requirements, and many of these applications that were developed in these spaces really came before the advent and the mainstream adoption of cloud that has occurred. So as a result, it becomes a dilemma, right? It's very challenging, complex, and can be expensive to re-architect and port these applications to run natively in the cloud, especially in a timely manner. However, now the introduction of cloud native technologies such as S3 compatible object storage, those technologies really provide a path to building a private cloud infrastructure on-prem that delivers the same benefits, capabilities, experiences of public cloud, while allowing organizations to retain full control of where sensitive data is located and gives them, a sense of control and over that data. Amit, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. And if you see, right, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've heard of organizations talking about cloud has become a priority. We are a cloud-first organizations, and as you talk to more of these organizations 5 years down the line, you realize that the cloud migration started, but for whatever reason, they were not able to take everything to the cloud. And what over the period that customers and enterprises have realized is that the real desire is to get a cloud-like experience while being able to preserve control over their mission critical applications and their sensitive data. So, I mean, the sensitivity of the data, whether it's regulatory requirements or actually being able to secure that data, is becoming extremely important. And what are these, cloud-like experiences that they really are looking for? Elasticity, scalability, flexibility, the whole self-service nature of the cloud promise, the metering, simplified management, the chargebacks, and all of those good things that the cloud offer. Now, what they've realized is we can actually get a lot of these on-prem while keeping things under control. So S3 compatible technologies that you talked about, the Cloudian Hyperstore that is an S3 compatible object storage platform. It kind of gives you a lot of these benefits, giving you the highest compatibility with the S3 API, so that all the applications that are written for Cloudian will work in the cloud and vice versa. And you kind of get the best of both worlds, right? Where you can run this on VMs, bare metals, and containers, and you get the same kind of multi-tenancy, QoS, billing capabilities that you would in the cloud. So if you look at what customers are really desiring, they are now starting to realize that it's not a public cloud only story that is going to work for them. It's going to be a little bit of both, especially when you start looking at the security aspect, the regulatory requirements aspect, and again, the platforms like Cloudian with their high security and compliance certifications are offering customers an alternate and a way of actually straddling the best of both worlds, and that's what we see as going to be a big trend in the coming year.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for prediction number 1. We can move on to prediction number 2. So organizations will embrace redundancy to mitigate continuing outages. Amit, what do you think on that one?
Yeah, I'm going to take that first. So absolutely. I mean, think about what we just saw in December, right? With the massive outage for AWS. I mean, who hasn't seen the memes of Alexa not working and blocking out your ring so that people can't open their doors, their fridge stops working. I mean, how amazing is that if you have an outage in the cloud, that your basic services stop. Now if you look at what this means for businesses, it's a major concern. Businesses really are talking about business continuity here. So if you actually look at uh, you know focusing on just one cloud in the public, it's a recipe for disaster. So to mitigate this threat, we see organizations taking increasingly a redundancy heavy path, right? For especially for the mission control applications, deploying in multiple clouds, leveraging private clouds. And we just talked about in the previous segment, what organizations really are seeing is, if you start putting everything in place, if you get the flexibility, if you get the redundancy, if you get the cost efficiencies, they really are looking at a hybrid and a multi-cloud option going forward, right? And with tools that are present today, especially on the modern app side, like things like Kubernetes, which make cloud mobility a reality, right? You can now create applications that can be easily moved from on-prem to one cloud to another cloud and run anywhere. These technologies are rapidly maturing and providing new options for optimizing your workload placements, right? And making the whole high availability redundancy a reality, while being able to optimize your cost across these various infrastructure options. Larry, anything
Yeah,
from your
I mean,
side?
I totally agree with you, Amit. Here at Clouding, we see 2022 being a huge breakout year for mainstream adoption of hybrid and multi-cloud solution architectures, really making those pervasive and becoming a reality. And if you think about it, this kind of makes perfect sense, right? Um, you know, I and others believe that we're in the midst of what we're calling this application paradigm shift. And what does that mean? Really, the definition of the application is changing. For years, we've had these traditional applications that are 2-tier, 3-tier type architectures, or built on what some are calling now monolithic architectures. But these new applications, these modern applications, are being developed cloud native, and they're really based on containerized microservices. So again, traditional applications typically reside on one or more VMs. However, these modern apps, they're becoming distributed systems, as we saw the evolution of containers go from stateless to stateful, now distributed stateful. And these systems are comprised of these modern stateful services, such as Redis and MongoDB and Cassandra and Kafka, Elasticsearch, and of course, native cloud native S3 storage, S3 compatible storage like Cloudy and Hyperstore. There are several obvious benefits here, but these microservices-based containerized architectures also introduce new management complexities that we feel have really hindered their adoption initially. But
Right.
as you mentioned, Kubernetes continues to make huge strides in solving the microservices management challenge. It's driving standardization and simplification and really providing that seamless portability and mobility experience among and between clouds of all shapes and sizes. You couple that with industry leaders such as Red Hat and VMware and Amazon and Microsoft, Google, and others are really heavily investing in their own Kubernetes distributions. We believe this is really going to pave the way to make hybrid cloud and multi-cloud architectures a reality for the mainstream enterprise going forward. So really excited about this space and to see how this evolves.
Awesome. Thank you guys both for prediction number 2. So we'll move on to 3. So we're predicting security experts will continue to miss the mark with ransomware protection. And, unfortunately, more people continue to work remotely in 2021, just like in 2020, and companies continue to adapt their workforce to life outside the office. And therefore, ransomware attacks are continued to be expected to accelerate. So, Larry, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, ransomware, I think it's kind of like COVID. It's a necessary evil that we have to deal with and are living with on a daily basis. It continues to be, mainstream news cycle pretty much every week. And if you look at some of the security experts, they continue to tout increased perimeter defense as kind of the catch-all for ransomware protection. And while it's a very, very important piece to detect that intrusion, detect those anomalies, it doesn't provide a complete solution for when you actually are impacted or an organization is impacted by ransomware. So if you look at a recent ransomware victim report, 49% of businesses that experienced attack had perimeter defenses in place, and ransomware still managed to get into their environment. In addition to that, 65% of those organizations that were penetrated through phishing emails, they had conducted anti-phishing training for their employees. They went through all of the enablement to try to put preventive measures in place, but they were still penetrated with ransomware. So I think the threat of ransomware, it will likely continue to rise in 2022. Unfortunately, that kind of puts us into making it a matter of if, not when, an attack will occur for many organizations. So, given these realities, given the current circumstances of the environment that we all live and operate in, I think more organizations will recognize the need to protect data at the storage layer with an immutable backup copy, ultimately ensuring they can recover quickly from an attack without having to pay ransom. They'll couple that immutable backup copy with those perimeter defenses and other mechanisms that put in place to really combine to deliver a holistic solution. But at the end of the day, if you do get penetrated, and ransomware may live in your environment for days, weeks, months, until it's actually deployed. So that's where that immutable backup copy of your data will be able to quickly restore, recover, and resume your operations with ultimately not having to pay the ransom.
I'm actually going to add on to your COVID analogy. I really like that because, just like COVID's been mutating and you have now variants
Yep.
with ransomware, we've already started seeing that. And we're going to continue to see the evolution of ransomware where as they try to get intelligent. Now, in the dark web, there have been reports about ransomware as a service. Uh, Bad actors can go in and spin up ransomware in some third world country infrastructure and attack your data and your infrastructure in a matter of minutes. It's a service. It's becoming easier, and therefore it's not just about uh, you know uh, protecting against one attack. It's going to become relentless, and it is becoming relentless. All they need to do is get through one weak link in the chain, right? You could have one person clicking that picture of whatever, and you have your hackers in. You have ransomware attacks happening and mutating into data exfiltration attacks, where people are not just going in and doing a cryptological attack in terms of, you know, how do you call it, encrypting your data. Now they take that data and they make a copy of it, and you know, threaten you with exposing sensitive information. That's an evolution of the ransomware attack. So attacks are increasing, attacks are mutating, and they're getting even more sophisticated, right? So, and there is no silver bullet today to eradicate ransomware. In some ways, it's kind of endemic. We have to live with it. And data immutability has really become the last resort defense against ransomware. And it is one of the most important ones. Let me tell you, we worked with a lot of customers and organizations where we are now starting to see cybersecurity insurance companies requiring organizations to protect their data at the storage layer, right? This is not at the perimeter layer. They are talking about you need an immutable copy of your data. So even if it's not a matter of if, but when you get penetrated, you already always have an immutable backup copy, so that even if the ransomware attack happens, you can just not have to pay for it, and you always have a working copy to make sure your business continuity is on, right? And with and at Cloudian, what we've done in our storage platform is we've adopted support for S3 object lock. And we've had this since December of 2019. We are the it's probably we're the oldest. Sorry, that's not the right way to say it. We are the first on-prem vendor to have implemented S3 object lock way back in December of 2019, even before any of the other vendors had this. We look at AWS as the gold standard, and the day they implemented S3 object lock, we knew we were going to support it. And since then, it has become the de facto immutability standard for any and all cloud storage platforms. So it's kind of, a validation. And what it does is it allows us to work with a multitude of other vendors and partners that have also since started supporting the same. Ergo, our close partnership with Veeam, where we offer a very very seamless solution to our customers for an object data immutability use case with object lock, right? In these scenarios, uh, data which is stored in objects at the object level is made immutable for a certain period of time, and we offer a couple of different methodologies to do that as per the standards. Of course, there's the governance model, which is a little more flexible and can be used internally, and then there's the compliance mode, which is the stringent mode specifically designed for ransomware protection. And then with Cloudian, it's and with now with the exfiltration attacks, it's not just enough to have uh, object lock and data immutability in your features. What these are still software features, and if the hackers can get in at through your perimeter defenses and get, let's say, access to the root, they can still clean out your software defined storage, and none of these features are going to help. So what we've done here at Cloudian is we've worked on diligently with third party security vendors to make sure that we are uh, at the top of the game for security. What we do is when we ship our product in the worm mode, we enable things like secure shell, integrated firewalls, role-based access controls, encryption for data stored on Cloudian at rest, secure connections for data in flight. All of these things together is going to give you the confidence and the security for your data to not just thwart any basic kind of ransomware attack, but you know one thing that forgot to talk about is disable root access. So when we ship our product in the secure mode, we have root disable enabled. So even if a hacker gets into your system, there is no access for them at the root. Therefore, they are completely locked out from trying to execute any of the ransomware attacks, or even trying to exfiltrate your data if you've implemented some kind of encryption. And then all of these features that we have are certified by third party governmental agencies. We have certifications around SEC Rule 17A4, FINRA Rule 4511, CFTC, Common Criteria, FIPS, and you name it. And we have a huge laundry list of certifications for security. And that is going to be extremely important, for this third prediction. Because again, it is very clear, ransomware is not a matter of if, but it's when it gets into your system. So you got to be protected and just keep your systems as secure as possible.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amit. I think a lot of that holds true, and we've been seeing that, especially over the past few years, like we mentioned. So a little bit of me hopes that we're not accurate on that one, but we probably will be. So please plan accordingly. That makes us move on to prediction number 4. So we'll be talking about data sovereignty and how the concerns will create new opportunities for MSPs, which are managed service providers. Larry, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Privacy concerns in EMEA continue to grow and are top of mind. Since the Schrems 2 decision basically invalidated the EU-US privacy shield that was in place. The Court of Justice of the European Union found that the protection of personal data had limitations due to the domestic law in the United States, as well as the access and use by U.S. public authorities of personal data transferred to or from the EU. I think this is really, driving this being able to comply with these new regulations, and this new landscape is driving organizations to look at new options to protect data. MSPs and the managed service providers across the EU, I think, will step in to increasingly feel this need with locally based services that are entirely contained within geographic boundaries. Introducing geofencing and capabilities to ensure that data is not copied, moved, replicated outside of those defined boundaries. So now, mature cloud infrastructure comprised of compute, storage, and all the networking, the management capabilities will facilitate this growth and create a wealth of new options for customers in the EU to explore. Right? So I don't think there's going to be any one vendor or hyperscaler option that will be the dominant preference for organizations trying to comply and adapt to these new regulations. It's really going to be able to open up opportunities for these MSPs to create unique value with very specific focus areas of capabilities they can deliver to help customers solve these problems. Amit, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And data sovereignty is a huge issue. It's a huge uh, point of discussion and conversation. In fact, it's not just for the EU, it's for the rest of the world, anywhere outside the US. In fact, this morning, I was looking at this article about how the Australian government is now having to deal with aspects of data in the cloud which are considered to be in violation of GDPR. So just public cloud is not working for a lot of these things, and sovereignty is for obviously for these country related issues, but it's also for compliance related issues, right? In heavily regulated industries, the concerns are the same. What it revolves around is data privacy regulations, data residency regulations, data sovereignty regulations, and that's slightly different from data residency and sovereignty. It's sovereignty is all about the application of the law. Residency is where it physically resides. So all of these become a concern, and of course, all of this has to be in the realm of data protection and management. You need to be able to provide that, and of course, data security. We can talk about data security forever, but all of these together form, the whole sovereignty discussions. And MSPs are at the forefront of this discussion. They are actually on the front lines to be able to provide a solution for these concerns from the customer side, but also to take business advantage of the situation. So customers, again, we talked about, the customers are looking for a cloud journey, and cloud today means much beyond the public cloud. MSPs are clearly going to be a part of that, specifically with the sovereignty movement in play outside the US and in regulated industries. As more companies accelerate these cloud strategies, as we're talking about, they will increasingly look at MSPs as part of a portfolio of their options. And MSPs can potentially even be, their semi-private cloud that gets offered to a specific customers to help them implement their data security, their data protections, compliance needs, and help them with complying with the privacy legislation of that specific country, and in some way also for you specifically, comply with GDPR requirements and so on and so forth. So MSP is a uh, huge part of the story.
Awesome. Thanks, Amit, so much. Yeah, we're seeing an uptick, so this is completely on par, and I'm curious to see where this goes by the end of the year. So that moves us on to prediction number 4. We are predicting that object storage will help accelerate HPC innovations. What do you guys think?
I can get started on that, right? So I've been working with quite a few partners on the HPC front, and HPC solutions are finally catching up to the whole distributed model of operation, right? HPC deployments have become highly distributed. They don't just rely on big fast computers. They rely on distributed models. I mean, they're catching up, of course. And the data that they start to process is now exceeding into petabytes and exabyte scales. It's becoming clear that the storage component of that HPC infrastructure also needs focus, right? So we've seen solutions, like the Cumulos, the Veckers, and some others look at HPC problem and are solving it with parallel file systems, and is definitely a step in the right direction. Where they fall short is the underlying storage infrastructure. I mean, it is limited in scalability, and it is expensive, right? You cannot provide the amount of scalability and flexibility um, in the cost effective manner that's required. I mean, I used to work for a machine learning company at one point. We used to rely on HPC computing, and but the motto there was more data will always beat better algorithms. So HPC computing is going to become about how much more data can you process, and right, in continuing to make these advances in supercomputing, organizations will require to focus on more scalable software-defined storage systems that can accommodate for bigger data sets, more massive data sets for processing, for analyzing. And there's no better solution than object storage from a scalability perspective, from an access perspective to data, uh, to be used, as primary storage or in conjunction with primary storage, specifically for these kind of supercomputing deployments. So, spot on, Larry. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. I think, as you mentioned, in recent years, we've seen object storage become more and more integrated and deployed in conjunction with these massively parallel distributed file systems, like Weka IO, to address these emerging and growing HPC use cases. And it's kind of across the myriad of industry verticals. Some examples: genomic sequencing for life sciences, reservoir and seismic simulation and analysis for oil and gas, fraud detection, risk modeling for financial services, rendering, transcoding, visual effects for media and entertainment. So those are kind of specific use cases, but as kind of a horizontal and pervasive across all these verticals are the introduction of AI and machine learning for real time advanced analytics and deep neural network capabilities. Object storage like Cloud and Hyperstore provides that scalability, the elasticity, and the economics to best meet the needs of these ever-growing massive data sets, data lakes, data oceans, whatever your preference is. And I think that key point that you hit on is really the scale and the size, the volume and the velocity of this data continues to grow and grow and grow as organizations see it as continuing to be one of the most valuable assets in trying to garner as much insight and competitive advantage as they can out of that the data that's being collected. I would also add that I think with Flash now becoming pervasive and mainstream in the market, you're starting to see continued and increased adoption of NVMe and higher speed interconnects. That's well underway. Object storage is transforming as well. It's rapidly being designed for and integrating these architectures and these technologies into their architectures to deliver huge gains in performance and latency compared with the hard disk based systems, the hard drive based systems. So you couple the large economic and other benefits object storage provides. It's now much better positioned to directly support these performance centric workloads and use cases that evolve around the HPC space. So I believe this will lead to further advancements and innovation in the HPC space, and we're certainly excited to be part of that here at Cloudian and look forward to see where these use cases and where these technologies take us into the future.
Thanks, Larry, for that. So, I want to circle back and touch on modern apps a little bit more, but in the context of another hot space in storage, and that's the edge. So our sixth prediction is that cloud native apps will go to the edge. Larry, what do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Probably start off with saying that with the help of organizations like the Cloud Native Computing Foundation or CNCF, excuse me, enterprises have made major progress in adopting cloud native technologies in public, private, and also hybrid cloud environments. We believe in 2022, enterprises will continue to capitalize on the improved portability and agility to bring cloud native apps from the cloud to their core data centers and ultimately push them out to the edge. However, for open source CNCF projects to work, I think they really required this broad standardization of both software and hardware. And I think as that plays out, you're going to see it's going to be a key enabler to bringing these cloud native apps to the edge. So to just kind of support that transition of cloud native apps to the edge, industry leaders in edge software such as Red Hat and SUSE Rancher Labs and edge hardware such as Intel and NVIDIA, they'll ramp up their efforts to try to drive and achieve greater standardization. Once these standards firm up and the key underlying technology layers that I mentioned a couple of them above line up to adopt, integrate, support them, I think their ecosystems will follow and the adoption of cloud native apps at the edge will take off. But it's really around that standardization and getting the underlying technologies in place, and then the ecosystems kind of follow. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I see Edge as a rapidly and massively evolving space, right? And definitely a lot of interest. I'm keenly following this space. Maturity is coming, and of course, standardization is one of the key enablers for mainstream adoption for all of these things. You've touched on a lot of these, great innovations coming in from all of these companies, and really the whole conversation is similar to the multi-distributed cloud conversations we just had. It's not about one aspect. It is about how the industry standardizes around Kubernetes for containers, and Kubernetes is going to be an enabling technology for the modern apps to get to the edge. I mean, we've been talking about that for a while, but as Kubernetes becomes more adoptable, more you know mainstream, it's going to just fuel a lot of these applications getting containerized and getting potentially put into the edge devices. It's all about the data centricity, right? So you're talking about bringing the workloads, analytics, ingestion of whatever to the data, and ensure that it's processed and actioned on the most effective and efficient manner possible. It's all about, can you do it faster, can you do it cheaper, and can you keep the whole data secure? And with the whole modern apps adoption of Kubernetes, I mean, that's definitely you know the way things are going, and cloud native apps going to the edge um, is definitely something that we are seeing. I mean, if you look at some of the examples, right, with the media industry, it's all about content transformation and filtering, where the media is actually being produced. In manufacturing, fault detection for components, machinery, as well as what's being manufactured, where it is being manufactured, not waiting till the data is transferred to some central processing place. Autonomous vehicles, you're talking about carrying these edge computing and storage devices inside these vehicles itself, and we've seen some innovation from Nvidia and the likes, being able to process and store data right there and there. Surveillance is another one. Financial industry, you're talking about potentially faster detection of frauds where your credit cards are getting transacted, and so on and so forth. So there's examples of these all over the place. And traditionally, when we used to talk about edge, a lot of people would just think about you know industrial application, but edge today is everywhere. It's all about bringing your data to your applications where the processing is happening. So cloud native apps are absolutely the key enablers for edge.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And that brings us to our seventh and final prediction for 2022. So we're predicting that new analytics and streaming APIs will drive next generation ed use cases. Amit, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Thanks. Yeah, so I've been working in the analytics space for a while now, and what we've seen is um, edge is just taking the analytics realm to the new place. It's all about being able to process the data and make decisions faster. We just talked about it: faster, cheaper, better, all at the edge, right? And to do that, right, you're going to have to process massive volumes of streaming data. And when we talk about streaming, whether it's micro streaming or it's basically the data as it's happening in real time, near real time decision making, right then and there, right? Um, the analytic tools, the streaming tools that you have, they're good, but there's definitely going to be an evolution of these to support the whole AI and ML at the edge journey, so to speak. Whether it's we're talking about new analytic and streaming APIs emerging in 2021 and beyond, that allow for processing data locally, enabling AI ML models, in more of a light weight format, and so on and so forth. It's really an evolving piece, and we believe this is the year for a lot of new innovation in the streaming space to be able to deploy at the edge. And some of the things that we look at what we're doing with our hyper analytic platform, which is it's a little bit of a name drop here because that's something that we are working on internally, is going in that direction. We're talking about, bringing the data to the edge, supporting all of these streaming paradigms in a different way, and enabling our customers to take advantage of this whole edge processing evolution. Larry, do you want to talk about that a little more?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, right, Cloudian is making strategic investments in the edge with our hyper analytics platform. This is being led and developed by our Chief Technology Officer, Gary Ogasawara, and the new tech team underneath his guidance. And you'll hear about this more later in 2022 as we kind of transition into the beta phase. But at a high level, the hyper analytics platform, it combines compute and storage into a single platform for development of edge applications. And it's comprised of three main components of its pluggable architecture. So there's a system management layer. This allows you to deploy pods for infrastructure and apps natively via Kubernetes. The infrastructure layer, obviously contains the containerized version of Hyperstore to provide S3 compatible object storage. It's leveraging and integrating S3 Select for filtering, S3 Object Lambda for transformation. And as we mentioned, as the topic of this prediction is a streaming feature store. The third layer in that architecture is applications. So this is streaming aggregation, the machine learning execution, and training of those models. And within the kind of double clicking a little bit into the infrastructure layer, that's where really one of the key components of the architecture resides, and that's the streaming feature store. This utilizes AWS SageMaker APIs for all the put, the get, the delete records, and a series of streaming APIs for operations like time travel, aggregation, and mapping. And within the streaming feature store, there are two types of feature stores. There's an online and an offline. And both are required because there's applications and use cases out there that require data from both structured and streaming sources simultaneously. For low latency type operations, real-time requests, those are supported by that online feature store. And for the more denser, high capacity, more historical type data and analysis, that's provided in massively scalable elastic storage for these offline feature stores. So these feature stores really ingest data from sources, or ingest from sources such as raw data, structured data, event data, data lakes, and are used by online apps, batch processing apps, and they are really are a key input to create, train, and test out these AI and ML models. The existing streaming feature store API sets available today in the market, they vary in levels of maturity and capabilities. We're definitely early on in this space. And this has been one of the challenges. It's made it more difficult for developers and organizations to use these, and it has really held back and constrained adoption. But as obviously the prediction states, we're predicting in 2022. 2022 will bring with it major strides in these areas, and new API innovations will help catapult adoption of edge analytics and make data processing and analytics at the edge a reality.
Awesome. Thank you guys both. We do have some time for questions. So if you would take a quick minute, please type those in at the bottom of your screen. We do have a few sitting here. I'm also going to send out an announcement with a link to a survey. You'll get $5 Amazon gift card for completing the survey. It's a really short survey, so please do us the favor and complete that. And with that, I don't know, Larry, do you want to take this first question here?
Yeah, it looks like the one question we have in the queue is, I'll read it for everyone's edification, is EU Directive 2009, an EU Directive in 2019 addresses required cloud services certification framework requirement to ensure cloud services are assured at a substantial, medium, or basic level. And how are you addressing this for any potential EU customers? Yeah, that's a great question. So in a recent draft, that was last year, the EUCS, or the European, see if I get this right, the European Union Cybersecurity Certification Scheme on Cloud Services. That's a mouthful. They developed this new draft, a candidate scheme, and it's voluntary, but it's something that we're definitely paying attention to and trying to align to. So it does cover those three assurance levels: the basic, substantial, and high. So we will, as we roll out, kind of our introduction into cloud services, we will be looking to test and certify against those standards to really help boost the trust levels of these cloud services, and aligning to that reference set of security requirements. That could range. Obviously, we'll be focused on the infrastructure layer of that heavily, but this draft and this candidate scheme extends up into the applications and varying cloud services as well. And it's really gives us a framework to try to ensure that we are compatible and we are complying, and we ensure that we're meeting the security requirements that is going to be adopted specifically for the EU. So we can, the ultimate end goal, I think, is to, having everyone that plays in the space in the EU ensure that security is there. There's a certification in place, and that really the outcome that everyone's looking for is to enable the free flow of data across Europe. And that's really going to be, once that's in place, it's going to set the groundwork for enabling additional innovation and probably more importantly, competitiveness in Europe to make things more attractive from a cost perspective, and to give customers flexibility and choice.
Let me add a little more to that, right? So EU is Europe, or the whole EMEA region is a pretty big and important region for Cloudian. So we have a lot of deployments in the public sector across Europe, and we've been working with various different organizations, third-party organizations, governmental organizations, to get compliance certified in a lot of these things. So we already have, as of 2019, certifications around Swiss obligations and the German obligations for data privacy, security, and what have yous. This was done by a third-party governmental organization. We're not allowed to name that organization, but pretty much anybody who knows what I'm talking about knows who they are. And you can go on our website and download the full report. We are not able to download the report and send it to you, but you can go to our website and click the link to request that. What this does is pretty much, gives us a verified mark on a lot of these obligations from the EU space specifically. And again, working with a lot of these public sector companies within Europe has required us to make sure that all of the features and capabilities we do comply with not just the specific country law, but it does meet all the regulatory standards as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. It looks like that's all the questions that we have right now. If you do have any other questions and you are on the line, feel free. You can reach out. It's lmeese@cloudian.com and arolani@cloudian.com. You will be receiving an email at the conclusion of this with a link to the downloads and the attachments if you didn't already click on those. And we look forward to figuring out how 22 pans out and how on spot we are, or on par we are with some of these predictions. So thanks, Larry and Amit, for joining us today, to our lovely audience as well. And we look forward to engaging with you guys in 2022. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great year.